In this episode, we're going to be exploring something a little more foundational, something that hits a little closer to home, and something most people take for granted, in today's day and age especially. And it's the concept of I am who I think I am. I'm Daniel Darman for Resonant Truth. In this episode, I'd like to go into and explore the idea and the concept of identity. And what does it mean to even be a self? How was that concept even constructed? Because if you really break it down, the idea of you really only exists as long as you sit there telling yourself that you exist. We might look at the awareness behind our thoughts, behind our feelings. But there's an illusory nature to this when we start doing some deeper inquiry. You look into the realm of near-death experiences and people astral projecting and remote viewing, and how we can do phenomenal things with our consciousness, far outside of the identity that most people are programmed to believe. So then, where did people get it wrong? Where did people fall into this idea that we are who we think we are? And for most people, it starts every single time they wake up in the morning. If you were dreaming, you reacclimatize. Even if you're not dreaming, you reacclimatize. You remember who you are, what you have to do today, what job you need to dress for, and anything else that helps define you. But really, what if you're not necessarily remembering, but you're actually reinstalling the same programs? And don't worry, we're not above this either. This is something that it's just inherent in the nature of who we are. We have to live in this world. And this is something that we've recently been explained to in our QHHT sessions that Eleanor and I perform on each other. To exist in this world is to play other people's games. And so to exist, survival very much is a game that requires identity. But with that, I don't want to just say in today's world, but in the world in general, safety is critical. We can't ignore the nature of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's something that, since its foundation, I believe it was the 1940s, has stood untested. And I'm still yet to hear any strong arguments against Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But the thing is that only the top two parts, self-actualization and self-transcendence, these are the only two parts at the tip of the triangle that are not rooted in survival and safety. And so who we become, for the most part, is fundamentally framed around the concept of what helps us be safe. Whatever that includes, distortions and all. You might have found yourself becoming the helper, the achiever, the detached one, the strong one. It doesn't matter. They're all identities. They help us survive. But there are also parts of us, particularly if you haven't done shadow work before, confronting the shadow can reveal a lot of parts that we've used for survival that don't necessarily serve us. At least not anymore. Even when having clients come in for work, many of them hold scripts that are very outdated. And even though once upon a time it was necessary to fight, it was necessary to fawn, it was necessary to freeze, they don't need to anymore. So they're still acting out these very primitive, and I don't mean that in an insulting manner, but these scripts that they installed at a much younger age that are no longer serving themselves now and their capacity to achieve as much as they want. And so these scripts themselves, although they're survival at one level, they eventually start to constrict and confine and limit the potential. And this isn't just clients. I've seen it in family and friends and even ourselves. This is how the game of identity works. It's nested within the game of survival. And so you can really tell, you can really gauge what scripts are running when you notice that you are still performing something, even when no one's watching. That's when you know. That's when you know it's running the strongest, the deepest. Because at least if it's performative for other people, there can be a reason that's still necessary. Yet when it's behind closed doors, who's it really for? So when we move into this space of identity, I'm sure we've all heard the lines from the gurus, from the life coaches, from the motivational speakers. You're not who you think you are. You can achieve limitless potential. And all of these things that sound great and wonderful on paper. But what I noticed, especially in myself, especially when I was younger, was that the two words would always come up, the same two words. Yes, but. And what I realized looking back on myself is that they might have been correct for the most part, but they hadn't really considered or understood the complexities of my life at the time. And as we've continued to do work with clients, we've noticed the same thing. Yes, but. There are very unique scripts and challenges that everyone faces that shapes their identity in a way that the scaffolding needs to maintain it. It needs to be erect so it can continue to hold the structure as repairs are needed. Because the thing is, being able to dismantle that requires a type of change that can be so big, so profound, that most simply aren't ready to question who are they really beyond survival. So when I used to hear them say the line, "You are not who you think you are," and I'd say "yes, but" to myself, and then there'd be a silence, it made me realize that what they were saying felt like a shallow echo dressed up as a revelation. It just really didn't ring true to the deeper parts, because usually what was said right after it was something about earning, finding a better job, or earning more money, or something to improve your life in the 3D, in the physical world that we know ourselves to be in. It always comes back to that. Even The Secret. I remember when my father first got me onto The Secret and told me how good it was and how much it worked for him. And I was still young, I was only 17 at the time, but it felt good and fluffy, but it didn't really resonate. And then I went back and watched it just last year, and I realized how much it was, as I said before, it was sort of tuned back to achievement in this world. It was just something about it it became shallow of what it could really tap into. And even that felt performative. And so what I've really come to learn is that these people that speak out lines like this, they're not really initiated into the deeper spiritual reality. They're actors. And they're actors trying to play the mystic. They're trying to understand something in which they don't fully grasp. They have some semblance of it, and they've been able to do it for themselves, quite likely. I'm not there to doubt that. But how do they know how to cast the widest net to help create that change and transformation in others? When we speak this, we don't use a line like this lightly. Eleanor and I practice regularly. We've sat in the dark. We've gotten ourselves into states where we've forgotten our own name. We've come back wrong. The point is to explore the concept of "I am who I think I am" has to incorporate the concept that your own awareness can lose sight of the name, of the labels, of the job, of the roles, of survival. Altered states of consciousness are key to being able to figure this out. And so this isn't about mindset. If you're familiar with the concept of ego death, this is something when I was on Reddit, looking up the mystical communities, looking up the psychonaut communities, they talk about the concept of ego death, about killing the identity that you think you are. And they talk about, for example, people who have bad trips are always the ones that don't know how to let go. In essence, they're not who they think they are. Doing this work is not linear. It's not quick. Sometimes it's violent. Sometimes it's monotonous. But it's always sacred, and it must be respected as such. So then what's the process like? Well, to start, you don't need anything. Well, that's not entirely true. You don't necessarily need tools. You certainly don't need drugs or any other mind-altering substances. But really what you need is stillness. Really what you need is relaxation. And really what you just need is awareness, focused awareness. This is why I mentioned the concept of altered states is critical to being able to understand who we are at a deeper level. This is something that's key to being able to access past lives through our work. This is key for us to bring back recollections of our dreams. And this is also key to effective breath work. It's not just about the in and the out. It's keeping your focus on something while drowning out the rest of everything else you think you are. There was one QHHT session with Eleanor where when she came back, she said something that made us both laugh. And that was, it was nice to forget about Eleanor for a while. And I think that really encapsulates the whole concept of I am who I think I am. Because when you, for example, explore past lives, or you invoke your higher self, so we can have a dialogue with it, who are you then? Where are you then? What are you then? It's funny being in these altered states because losing your concept of self, of your identity, is not just losing your name. It's not just losing even your life. It's even losing your awareness of self and other, up and down, left and right, past and present and future. It's really to tap into these altered states as well. It's more tapping into the essence of your being. And that there can be very scary for some people. Even during my first past life regression, the practitioner was wonderful. Although I was not ready to surrender anywhere near as deep as I needed to. I almost failed the session, which not really surprised me, but it was still a surprise given how much I paid for it and realized there was a potential for me walking out of there empty-handed. But just the idea of being able to relax into whatever might come in the moment. When people hold on to parts of their identity, when people haven't done the shadow work and actually looked at their own projection, really, of who they are, most people's responses are, again, the thing that reinforces that sense of safety. And so how do most people react when they're scared? Well, we see it in stress states. They fight, they flight, they run away, and sometimes they even freeze. But the concept of just overcoming any fear, any doubt, and just being able to trust whatever happens, it might shock you what can come to you. Because to become something else it's a transformation of you. It's like dying. I mean, honestly, as an experience, I've experienced death in many lives and even in many dreams. And really, to change your identity is to die. But what most people don't think of when they think of death is they forget that a rebirth must also happen too. They think of life and their identity as a linear progression. I was born in this year in this country and, well, I've got, 50 years left at best if I'm lucky, and I'll die here and that's where I end. But they've completely lost touch with the fact that once you end, then what do you become? And it's something that most people I've seen don't even speak to at all. And so just being able to relax, just being able to focus, and just being able to drift has revealed more about my identity, and more of what my identity is not just what it's not, but it reveals more of what my identity has been constructed, both by myself and by those around me. And so in these states, it's like entering a place. If we zoom out of any central identity we have, even outside of the human, being able to fully, it's sort of fully enveloping, but also becoming fully enveloped. It's like a place that cannot be described. The sense of I loses itself amongst the ocean of we, and we loses itself among the ocean of the all. And you realize that everything is a construct. All of our lives, all of our scripts, even our bodies. Even if you try and bring it back to the awareness that holds all the cells in place and doing all of their jobs. Are your cells you? It's fair to say they're a part of you. But deep in this state, even holding on to that concept of I is just too slippery. And it's also very terrifying because people have built their lives striving, achieving, creating, building, struggling against. This dimension is very easy to get attached to, but you can't take it back with you. Even the identity itself is not something you can take back with you in its totality. There's parts that we carry. But even if we go back to the pure objective truth, even identity itself is just another construct. It's another thing that we ultimately can't carry. But there's something so freeing about that as well. The more we can lean into it, the more we can be comfortable with not even knowing who we are in this space. To know that ourselves is not ourselves. It can be so terrifying, but also so liberating. Depends on where you stand now. So then my question to you is, if you did this work, and you got to a point where you couldn't even hold your thoughts, the sense of a name, an identity, a story, all of that slipped through your fingers right now in this moment, who's left? What's left? Who's breathing? Yet eventually, after realizing this, you return. Your identity comes back. It always comes back. It was just shelved for a while. But what you notice is that even in this state, who you thought you are was someone else entirely, something else entirely. And so for that reason, when you come back to the identity, you're not the same. You were given this unique opportunity to see beyond the masks, to see beyond the identity, to see beyond who you thought you were. And with that, the masks fit looser. Your stories, your attachments, the people you carry in your life, you start to see how they become optional. And so with that, we also come to realize, as the pain returns, as the headaches return, as the fights and the struggles with people we know and we have in our lives, and with ourselves, most importantly, we don't need a new self. But we recognize that all we have to do is just stop gripping the old one. Because once we can stop gripping the old one, then we're no longer bound by those limitations that afflicted us to begin with. And this isn't light work. This is very serious, it's maybe not even serious, but this is sacred work. To be able to play with your own conscious awareness and your own living, breathing experience. If this isn't the essence of coming to the answer of, I am who I think I am, to go outside of who you think you are, then you realize most people have no idea really who they are. If you took away their name, you took away their titles, you took away their family and their friends and their upbringing, then you realize most of the world has no idea who they think they really are. And the irony for that is, I also realize I'm not who I think I am either. And I think the simplest truth, the point of it all, is it's so obvious but difficult to name. If only this were obvious, then our ability to let go, our ability to transform, our ability to surrender into our higher selves, to get the answers and to find elements of ourselves that exist far beyond who we think we are, then becoming who we actually are would be that much easier.